Hi, I'm Christine Barry. Welcome to Barry Campbell. We are so excited today to be sitting with Ann Purcell. She is one of our favorite artists in the entire world, and we are so pleased to work with her. This is our third exhibition of Ann Purcell's work at Barry Campbell. We are very excited about that. This particular series we're showing this time is called the Callie Poem Series. Ann started these paintings in about 1983, and they're ongoing. I hope you will come visit this show. These are masterpieces I think you can see behind. And Ann and I are going to just have a little talk about her work and about her life. And Ann, let me just welcome you. So glad to see you. We're just so grateful to work with you.
And I am too. I lucked out. I'm very fortunate to be showing with you all and everything you've done.
We're a great team, we are. So tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school.
Well, my family moved from New York to Washington, D.C. because my dad became the White House correspondent for the New York Daily News. He was their first head of their Washington bureau. And so I grew up in a very political family. My father was a highly respected crusading journalist.
Wow.
That to this day people will say, "Are you by any chance Jack Purcell's daughter?"
Oh, wow.
He was very heroic, and we got to DC because of that. And another unusual aspect to my upbringing was in the late 40s and early 50s, my father used to take me to work with him all the time to the White House.
Oh, whoa.
And I got very used to seeing Harry Truman and his daughter playing the piano and
wow.
all these luminaries. And then he would take me to the National Press Club. And I was the only girl in the room except for the naked Maha painting behind the bar. And
that's what you were looking at.
No, but she was the only female. They didn't allow women in the press club until 1976.
Oh my gosh.
The journalists. My dad never said this is a conversation for adults or men only. So I would argue with Eric Sevareid and Walter Cronkite, and so that was a very unusual.
I see, you're a strong woman with a strong opinion, and I can see where that came from. Thank goodness for him for doing that.
I don't know how he came up with that. I myself then went into politics, and I was considering politics or journalism, certainly. And it's very strange looking back on life, because sometimes things that seemed a tragedy are a blessing in disguise. So
what happened? Did you go to the Corcoran?
No.
Okay, so how did you get to school?
I was in this all-girls Catholic private school because I got in scholarships, and I'd never had an art class in my life, although I started painting when I was in high school because I read a book about Gauguin and how, I think it's The Moon and Sixpence, and he copied a famous artist, and it was a rainy Sunday, and I thought, well, I'll try that. And I was just hooked. I just loved painting. So I was very fortunate in a way. My father got sick, so I had to leave school, get a job. And so I eventually worked into politics, and I worked up in the senator's office, Senator William Proxmire. I was first receptionist, and then I was his personal secretary, and I was a lousy personal secretary. But he had faith in me, and somehow he thought I was an artist, and I didn't think I was. But he expanded me so much in that job and gave me freedom, and I became a writer then, and I wrote speeches for him. And then I worked on George McGovern's presidential campaign, writing speeches for the senator. And
were you making art at the same time?
Always, always.
So you were painting on your own accord for many, many, many years.
Decades.
So day job, making paintings as well.
When I came home from work.
So when did you meet Gene Davis?
Well, then what happened is I was going to school at night too, because I was paying for my undergraduate degree. And took 12 years at night. And I just needed a few credits, but I didn't know what to major in. And luckily, finally, I got a guidance counselor, and they said, why don't you major in painting? I never thought it.
How could you, yeah, exactly. What do you do with this?
So they said, you know, you can take this one class and you can graduate. And this class was a special class that never happened again. It was with Gene Davis, a famous, you know, Washington Color School painter, known for his stripes. And he was a great teacher. And he had the summer class that met from 9 to 5 days a week.
Whoa, that's heavy duty.
Very heavy duty.
Yeah.
So any student who wanted to study like that had to be pretty ardent themselves. Somehow Gene took me serious right off the bat from day one.
Well, I understand why. I can see that he had good instincts.
Although I never let anyone see me painting, including Gene. I waited until they went to lunch and then I would paint.
I always tell people how Gene Davis was your mentor, but what everyone says, oh my gosh, she paints so differently than Gene Davis. And I said, well, I think that's an artist's respect for each other too. If you weren't copying Gene Davis, you have a mind of your own, and you were doing, and he respected that you found something different from him.
Well, actually, he envied me, which he told me, because of my method of working. And he knew. And the first thing he said to us in class was, you can do anything in my class except paint stripes. And I certainly wouldn't have the patience for stripes.
No.
But he used to say, and it's so true, he did admire me, I know, that I was just doing my own thing and what was in my skin and my nature. You shouldn't try to avoid that. So I didn't try to be any part of a movement or...
That's wonderful.
And they weren't to my liking at the time and stuff.
You definitely march to the beat of your own drum, I will say, in terms of painting, because I really don't know anyone that paints like you, and you have a very unique style. You've not stayed in one type of painting. It's expressionism, certainly. But let's talk about your relationship to ballet and to dance, because I think this is very influential. If you come see the show, you'll see all the movement in the paintings. And tell us when you started to take dance. Was it ballet only or all dance, or?
I was very shy, which people are shocked at now.
Surprise, shock, yeah.
Very shy. And my mother's mother said, you have to do something to socialize this child. So luckily my mother took me to a dance class that was in the neighborhood, and she was quite good. And she used to take me to the Sadler Wells Ballet. And even though I was shy, I was very good. So I always became the star.
Wow.
I studied ballet, I studied toe, I did study tap dancing. And that thing, I think they call it the Billy Robinson, where he goes down the stairs, you know, on his heels.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I used to be able to do that.
We should tap dance sometime together. I think that would be fun. Well, so how do you translate that? Did you always dance, and how did you?
I danced from the age of 3 and took classes, and I was an assistant teacher also from 3 to age 20, seriously.
Wow.
But in dance, I learned how to move freely, and I knew, you know, the poses, and you get to see the form and the movement of things in ballet, and I'm still hooked on it.
And it's like meticulous movement, so I see like a gesture in your painting, and I can kind of see that in the way someone would dance. It's meticulous in a way, your movement, even though it looks very free.
Right.
I think it's very controlled.
That's true, it is. And I see old pictures No, one that's on. I'm practically doing a splits.
Yes.
Because it let me get into the middle of the canvas when it was on the floor.
That's when you were making these paintings. We have that picture here, and it's an amazing, really, like, you're down on the ground. It's almost, I can connect it in some ways to Jackson Pollock, of course.
Very much so.
And you are a fan of abstract expressionism and Jackson Pollock.
Very much so.
You wrote your thesis on Jackson Pollock, and how do you see yourself in terms of art history connecting to the ABEX painters?
I'll tell you what was happening at the time, and I think it's since has happened. To my mind, you know, they're just heroes and heroines of painting, and just a great pantheon of painters. And so, as they say, they're a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of, I think, the art movements just threw out the problem. Instead of tackling the problem, what do I do next? And I just couldn't help it. They were my nourishment and my inspiration and my joy and my challenge. So
you're definitely a continuation of that movement. I know that you met Joan Mitchell. You told me the funniest story the other day about Joan Mitchell. Can you tell us that? You were at a party with her somewhere in DC?
There was a special dinner. They used to hold a Corcoran Biennial. And that year they were celebrating Richard Dibbencorn and Joan Mitchell. And only two artists otherwise were invited, Gene Davis and myself, by Jane Livingston, who was the curator of the Corcoran and hugely important in my life also. When I got there, I was to be at the table for Joan Mitchell. She came up to me, and she was a pretty saucy, sassy lady. And she immediately was sort of confrontational. She said, well, what gallery do you show with? And I said, well, Tibor Denage. So then when anyone else came to sit at our big table, she'd introduce me and she said, this is Anne Purcell. She doesn't need an art gallery. She shows with Tibor Denage, which was sort of perplexing. But I liked her tremendously, and I so admire her work. So after dinner, she asked me if I would walk around the show with her, which was such an honor. And so we were walking around and talking about the different shows, and I remember the second that we came across her big, big painting. It's a famous one, yellow and blue and a triptych. And we were standing in front of that painting, you know, just absorbing it. And two very hoity trustee ladies came up to her. And this very affected voice said, Joan, darling, how did you get that marvelous yellow? And she had a cigarette in her hand, and she said, it's cadmium yellow, straight out of the tube, baby.
Straight out of the tube, baby. That is so, I can see it. I feel like I can hear it and see it.
She was like Dorothy Parker.
Oh my gosh.
And they were sort of taken aback. But,
hey, she's telling the truth. And no tricks here.
No,
straight out of the tube.
But that's how she painted too. She was so straightforward.
And I can see why. Like, you look at this diptych, and I can't help but compare this to Joan Mitchell in some ways. And maybe we should segue and talk about this series of paintings, which I know is a lot heavier. These paintings are serious. They're dark and beautiful and mysterious. So I want to ask you about the Cali Poem series. You started this around 1983. What was the inspiration that got you going with these, and what held your inspiration for so long?
I'm not sure the transition, frankly. I had always done a lot up to that point. And being a colorist in DC, that Washington Color School was so eminent everywhere. I'd worked in black for many years, and I didn't realize at the time I was doing linearism in textures in black. I also studied a lot of the history of philosophy and the history of religions and art history. And I came to this basic idea when I had to write something for the Major Corcoran show in 1976. Livingston asked me to write a statement, and I remember I quick wrote it, and it had to do with duality and freedom, but order and order out of chaos, and it was about just 6 lines. And it's stayed with me ever since as my philosophy about life and the mysteries of the world. And it does have to do with duality, polarity of opposites. Out of darkness comes birth, and we need light for things to flower. And
there's a connection to May Sarton. You had read her poem at some point, and this idea of the Callie poem, a few lines from her poem, became important to you or stuck with you.
Well, what happened there really was, I think I had been painting the Callie poems for maybe 20 years. And then somewhere in my readings, I came across these 6 lines. And then I researched to see who wrote this, because it was similar to the 9 lines that I wrote for that Corcoran catalog. And it just said the Callie poem, but I didn't know who wrote them, and they just fit my philosophy and what I was trying to convey in these paintings, and it was from that May Sarton poem.
It's such a wonderful parallel. I know, very contemporary today to talk about poetry and painting. Things that some people say are dead, I think very well living they are indeed.
And especially, I believe, you know, among so many artists today, especially the younger ones, they're very much into poetry.
Yes. At galleries, there's poetry readings at galleries, and so I love this connection about these paintings. Thank you so much, Anne, for talking to me today. It's so great to learn more about you, and I hope everyone will come see this wonderful exhibition. We have a group of about 13 or 14 paintings, and they're just magnificent. We're at Barry Campbell Gallery, 530 West 24th Street in Chelsea.